Dean James Almeida from Silverman College of Business, Dean Oya Tukel from Martin Tuckman School of Management and JIT, and Dean Nawal Omar, Dean College of Humanities, Social Sciences at Rowan University. So we are an interdisciplinary group, so it's important for us to have these perspectives. So please give them a warm welcome first, and then so here's how we're going to do this. I have the questions. So I'm going to ask some questions for our panel, and then they'll share their ideas with us. And then towards the end, you'll have some time for questions and answers. And hopefully this will be a beneficial talk for all of us. So my first question is more about the strategic integration of AI. So from your perspective as a dean, what should be the top priorities when embedding AI into higher education curriculum? And how do we balance innovation with maintaining academic rigor? Here goes start from you, Dean Omar. There's a microphone there.
So thank you for inviting me to do this. Somebody said, why would, so we've changed the name of our college this year. And so the college is Communication, Humanities, and Social Sciences. So somebody asked, why would somebody who becomes social scientist be interested in AI? So let me just say something. The more AI gets developed, the more we look at people who do the humanistic social impact issues so that we don't have a mechanical society. But let me start with this. The central priority for me as a dean of communication, humanities, and social sciences, and as a social scientist, is that embedding AI effectively requires not only embedding AI, but requires us to clearly think about who we are educating, why we are educating, and what forms of intelligences do we vet. So the idea is not just to take it and say it's a tool, let's put it in there. As we are using it, we need to fix something that is broken, which is our higher education system. I hate to say that. The priority is reimagining education and its architecture. So no longer can we have professors who are basically authoritarian and they move as the bosses in the classroom. We need them to be navigators. We need guiding students through meaning and ethics. And the ultimate goal is to make education more human, not mechanical, by cultivating human imagination, creativity, and social responsibility, along with putting AI. How we're going to embed it, it's going to be for us in writing, it's going to be for us in social media analysis stuff. There are, in philosophy, it's going to be ethics. And in medical sociology, it's going to be issues of how do we do medical care with AI that is not responsible only, but that is ethical. So the priority is not AI only, but it's the entire educational system.
Hello everyone, I'm Oya Tukel of Martin Tuckman School of Management. So I want to start with what we have been working on so far, and then maybe move to the answer for the question. So New Jersey, many years ago, wanted to be a tech leader. So when we were offering the financial technology program very first time in 2021, the governor was very big on bringing fintech companies to New Jersey. So there is, and we're a state school and then NJIT. So the state has been showing a lot of support in terms of changing the landscape of how we operate in New Jersey and using technology and STEM as a differentiator. So they have quite a bit of incentives for small businesses and businesses in financial area and even field and field technology to be in New Jersey. So obviously that trickles down to all of us in terms of goals and strategies, how we are going to be in New Jersey, integrate a lot of these new ideas and technologies into our curriculum. So obviously it's not that easy because they say it and then doing it requires a lot of funding and a lot of professional development, finding the right resources and changes in a university setting, which is many times very slow. As you know, the approvals take time. But what the state did is creating an AI hub. So that's a huge initiative, bringing all the universities, including Rowan and JIT, Princeton, and all the other schools, and Fairfield Deakin, all of us are in that hub, promising funding for computing, right? Because, AI has many different components. There is AI computing part of it. There are AI algorithmic part of it, and then there are AI applications. And it has been confusing in terms of what everybody wants to do, not understanding where you belong and what it is that you wanted to do. But I think that will settle eventually. So that hub is also came up with a lot of guidance to universities in terms of how we can integrate AI. So obviously, when we bring it back to universities, one of the most important things is that universities are very conservative. So faculty resist to change. Approvals are very long and they are very basic research focused, right? I mean, back in the days, I remember even in a course description, when we were saying that in this data analytics course, we're going to use some kind of like Excel, and faculty said, we're not a vocational school, why do you put Excel? We're teaching students how to think, how to understand, and it has to be theoretical. So they weren't even willing to use stats or SAP or Excel in the course description. Well, that changed a little. So a lot of the schools are now facing the same thing with AI because AI is not developed by us, universities. It was developed and it's to our surprise, right? Usually things come from MIT or Berkeley, and usually there's a theory behind it and there are all these respectful researchers who are introducing it and we welcome. But this came from OpenAI. We never heard of OpenAI. It was open to public, not the researchers first. And everybody said, okay, play around with it and then use it in your classes. So that's why faculty has been very resistant to put it as a, higher education learning component. But then as the time is passing by, I think we started to learn more about what AI is. It's a tool. But then we're also realizing that the way that we educate students is not matching with the tool AI that can help students. So exactly what you were mentioning. So if you are going to use a very traditional learning setting where the faculty is teaching, keep telling you the confidence interval, right? All day long, as a faculty, you go teach confidence interval. But with AI, you don't need to do that, right? So the role of the instructor is going to be more monitoring and expert opinion in the room, but AI can actually give the lecture. So if you go to AI can put together a lecture and it can voice it, you can make a movie out of it if you want. AI can tell you the confidence interval, but the student, what has to do is to customize it to make sure the student is learning. That's where the benefit of AI comes. AI can go with your pace, and AI can, is patient. AI can keep telling you the same thing, gives you so many examples. So the instructor's role is to assurance of learning now, but not lecturing. So that's why higher education is going to go through this, change. It's coming because the instructors are not going to be asked to lecture anymore. Instructors are going to assure the learning is taking place, but the technology is going to learn, because students learn from technology so well today. All those phones, they know everything. They can run a small business. You know, a lot of our students have like small, they start like startups. They're using their phone and all the apps. We don't need to teach them anything. But the understanding of, financials and how you can start, with investments and stuff, they need us. But for explanation and lecturing is going to phase out. So that's going to change the landscape of who we hire, how we design the classrooms, and who's in charge.
So, again, I'll build off what my colleagues have shared here. And of course, where it's very, I would say, an existential question that is facing us as higher educators today, right? Because one of the forces that we are dealing with, certainly in this part of the country, the Northeast, is the so-called demographic cliff, right? And the proportion of high school students who are graduating, the number has declined, so clearly that is going to have implications, for instance, in terms of how many students are coming in. But more importantly, I think it's the questioning of the value proposition of higher education. So what is it that we, as higher educators, are doing to be able to convince people that there is value in this? I do believe that AI can have that transformational impact, okay, in terms of helping us define what our value proposition is going to be. But there are 4 things that we would need to focus on. First and foremost is, what do we teach the students when we talk about AI? As our keynote speaker earlier this morning shared with us, that's important for us to focus on the human being, on the human in the context of whether you call it deep learning or machine learning or what have you. So yes, the machine is important. Artificial intelligence is important, but so is also the human role. And so as educators, when we are developing the curriculum, we have to look into these concepts, right? How do we make sure that the human being is still front and center part of this learning experience? And then to what extent, for instance, do we bring in concepts such as ethics, decision making, okay, into the curriculum, perhaps in the form of an integrated course that all students would be required to take. So beyond that, the curriculum, the second aspect where we need to focus on is, what are we doing? How are we going to be delivering this? Right? In other words, do you have faculty who have the skills to be able to do it? And in fact, recent studies have shown, surveys have shown that one of the significant limiting factors for a number of institutions is the fact that faculty themselves do not feel comfortable that they are equipped with the skill sets to be able to teach AI. So one of the things we are doing here at Silicon College Business is we have developed a very comprehensive pilot program to upskill our faculty. Because while we talk about upskilling students, if you don't ourselves upskill our faculty, first and foremost, that becomes a crucial issue. So again, faculty training to use these tools to incorporate AI into the curriculum is fundamental. The third thing I would say is about the ethical aspects. How do we incorporate ethics into how AI is going to be effective in the curriculum, right? And so to what extent, for instance, issues such as plagiarism comes into play? To what extent does mean when you are using a tool such as AI, and we know, for instance, that AI hallucinates. So how do we train our students to be able to recognize those skills. And finally, it's about the skills themselves that we have to teach the students. Now, we often make a distinction between quote unquote the hard skills, the technical skills, and the so-called soft skills. And maybe soft skill is not the right term, but perhaps transferable skills. Now, the notion of emotional quotient. How do we bring this to bear in terms of what we do? So we talk about the notion of the interaction of the human with the machine. The notion of humanics, for instance, becomes front and center. When we talk about humanics, we're talking about technology literacy, data literacy, and human literacy. These three things combined together, right? So when we talk about human literacy, we're talking about things such as creativity, problem solving, okay, critical thinking, emotional quotient, as I was saying earlier. And as educators, we have to be looking at, is our curriculum future proof such that when these students go through our curriculum, they are confident that when they graduate with a degree from us and they go out there with their degree printed, whether it's from NGIT or whether it is from FDU or from whatever other institution, that they are confident that they are going to be able to go out there and have the skill sets to be successful and not just on a job, but on a career.
Thank you. So maybe we can this time start from you. As you all know, we are an interdisciplinary group. So for this question, I want to ask, how can schools of business, engineering, humanities, and other disciplines collaborate to design AI-related courses and programs that prepare students for an AI-driven society?
So giving you a very existential question for us, and this is something I would say I don't have the right answer. We are still in the discovery phase. Some of the things that we are trying out, for instance, is a much more of an interdisciplinary focus. As my colleague was sharing earlier, and this particular conference, the Society of Interdisciplinary, you're bringing people from different backgrounds, is so very crucial and pretty much consistent with what approach we need. So somebody coming in from an engineering perspective will bring in perhaps more of the technical skills, understanding how this technology is going to be affecting us, challenging us, the implications, right? Somebody from the business side would bring in what does it mean for decision making? How does it impact the future of an organization? Okay. And certainly somebody from the humanities would bring in perhaps more of the philosophical perspectives. What does this mean for us as humanity, as society? How does our culture, how does our sense of ethics, how does our values transform and impact what it is that we're going to be teaching? So clearly, I do believe that having an interdisciplinary focus is crucial to be able to move forward. And that's some of the things that we're doing. Now, of course, in addition to that, we are already working on a variety of different aspects of integrating AI into the business curriculum. So for instance, if you're an accountant, how do you do inventory control using AI? If you are a finance faculty, how do you incorporate AI into understanding business modeling and capital budgeting? And if you are in your own discipline over as marketing, how do you allow AI to impact your approach to developing a marketing strategy? So we're doing all of those things, but I think we also need to look above and beyond our own specific disciplines to look at this interdisciplinary from that perspective.
I know when I see NJIT, I always think about engineering schools. I don't know why, but they have such a strong reputation.
Change it. NJIT has 5 colleges. Engineering has been around for a long period of time, 1881. But it has architecture, business, College of Arts and Sciences, and a computing college, which is the integration of math, physics, and computer science. So, so we actually did come up with 120 credit hour BS in business with AI degree. So we got that approval actually not too long ago from the state, beginning of September. So it is ready, it's in the Common App that students can apply. So we did go through some of these thinking, how can we make sure that we are, putting all the needed disciplines into the curriculum. So it took us a while to be able to develop the curriculum. But for example, when we talk about AI, first I sent 15 faculty to a summer program at MIT to better understand, without a code, how AI tools can be applied in supply chain, in accounting, in finance, So when we talk about AI is really not one thing. So AI has like chip business. So we're not in that business. That's computer engineering, right? So, and then there is AI related cloud computing, right? Computing power. We're not in that business either. And then there is these language models, right? The LLMs, so those are all AI modeling that, like in supply chain, they use it a lot, right? Those are the codes, the algorithms, the programs that students can use to develop, logic, right? And tell machine what to do. Well, back in the days in 1990s, when I was a doctoral student, we had a course called Expert Systems. I don't know, many of you are faculty, you take courses like that. So the expert system was fun because we had really very primitive computers back then, but the ambition was there in terms of creating smart machines, right? The artificial intelligence. We didn't call it artificial intelligence, we called it expert systems. So the expert systems, we developed it with Fortran. How many of you remember Fortran? I'm dating myself, Fortran language. So we were doing these logics, right? You can do this, if this happens, then go there, if not, go there, and then the loops need to work. You don't go into infinite loops, right? And then you come up with a result. So we used to do a lot of those in those information system type courses. And at that time, we were using, all these different ways of searching, right? Searching for the correct information, searching for the optimum solution. And there were like types of searches we used, including like taboo search and simulating annealing and, so a lot of those at that time were there. Actually, they say even 1950s, artificial intelligence, how the brain works, and neural networks, like another algorithms. How many of you work with neural networks back in the days in computer science? Yes, a lot of ladies actually, very good. But so we had those, but the machines were so bad that they never run and get you any answers, right? They were slow. We used to run it all night long. It crashed. So now what happened is that they developed the chips, right? And they developed the cloud computing, which is very expensive and, eats up so much energy. But they are so fast that these algorithms work so fast that they could search through a huge data set, like, right? So logic didn't change. That's the same thing that we did 30 years ago. But what changed is that the data set is much bigger because internet houses all that data. We didn't have that at that time. Concepts are the same, but the speed is new. So that made that infrastructure ready for everybody to try their algorithms. And then here OpenAI came up with all these probabilistic, right, algorithms to be able to find the answer to your question. So actually it is not that innovative, I have to say. What is innovative is these fast chips like the NVIDIA's, right? And some schools did benefit from all of this research much earlier, like University of Florida is one of the leaders. Many years ago, they declared that they are an AI house because they had an agreement with NVIDIA to develop NVIDIA and test it at the campus. And I'm a graduate of University of Florida, so I was saying, so what is this big deal about NVIDIA? I never did say that I should have purchased some stocks. But so that was 5-6 years ago. So they were so ahead of all of us that we didn't pay attention. So OpenAI has finalized everything because they got so much funding from Microsoft to be able to do it. Actually, if you look at it, this is really not that innovative, I have to say. And it does require a lot of interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary. Not only requires knowledge of, it's like the Apple, right? Apple iPhones, it requires so many different expertise to be able to put the phone together. All the material scientists, and the communication scientists, computer scientists, business, and AI is the same way already. You have to have a lot of these. So when we develop our program, 120 credit, our undergraduate program, for example, we included logic. Because, let's not take it for granted. Logic is important. Students need to understand our logic, how we operate our brain before telling the machine what to do. Like, it's not prompt engineering per se. It's much more creating a logic that makes sense with the machines. We do have a lot of AI application in, for example, financial technology, in, human resources with visuals, and a whole bunch of database and data analytics related, courses we include. The program is in the website. You can look at it. You will see that there is a core business, but there's quite a bit of very unique courses that is not necessarily going to be taught by our business faculty, but more interdisciplinary faculty because the concept is interdisciplinary. And I say transdisciplinary because, companies are ahead of us with many of AI applications that we would like to bring, companies also be part of educating students with projects because we just received one project from the Hackensack Meridian. So Hackensack Meridian actually it's a big one of the top 20 healthcare systems. They do have an AI innovation lab, and the head of it is Dr. Weekly, who is a surgeon. But there's whole medical students in that lab doing AI. So that's interdisciplinary, right? So they teamed up with us to work on a problem about predicting the possibility of patients coming back within 30 days. Like you're treating, you're discharging them, but how likely is that they're going to come back? So they have huge data in the Epic system. We are not going to be able to take the data because it's very protected. But what they do is they have medical students who know AI modeling. So they're going to use our model ideas to test it with their data and let us know what's going on so that we develop the models, they test it. We develop the models, they test it. So they want a decision support system that supports the doctors and nurses. They don't want replacement. They want the doctor to be there as the human factor that will not change, but it will support the decision by guiding the doctor in terms of what has happened based on the data.
Okay. So just let me backtrack first. Collaborative education, interdisciplinary education is the best education. We have failed in higher education to do it well. We've done. I have 2 degrees that are in, I'm also go-gators, I'm also part of that. I have 2 degrees that are interdisciplinary, right? And when I started my master's in interdisciplinary, people were saying, what can you do with this? You need a discipline, right? So we have moved along now so AI brings in this idea that interdisciplinarity is the only way to really live and solve problems critically in this world. So I want to go from there by saying that while interdisciplinarity is important, we have failed because when you have interdisciplinary teams of research, always there's a hierarchy in that team, right? So it's, medical doctors are the best, they're smartest, then engineers, then people from business, then those of us who are trained in education and humanities and social sciences, they just bring us in so that they say it's until and unless, and the British universities have really done very well in the research centers. They have brought in an interdisciplinary idea that makes everybody an important and equal member of that research team. And it's the same thing in education. So we, in our honors college, for example, we have a lot of engineers in our honors college, and they take much of the general education in the honors college. It really makes me sad when I see what's going on, because they come in, they're engineers, why would they want to take history, civilization, right? So they just do it because they have to do it, not understanding that that will help them at one point in their lives. If not the knowledge, the way of thinking might help. So interdisciplinarity is really, again, restructuring how we do it. That's the first thing, where everybody is equal in the team. Nobody is better than the other. The other one is the structure of our educational system in terms of curriculum and writing proposals. It's a slow system. I mean, a curriculum takes 12 months at best to have it come out. So if we're going to create interdisciplinary curriculum, that is difficult. The third thing is, co-teaching is one way of bringing in interdisciplinarity. And for those of us who do numbers and have to make sure that our numbers do well, it's very difficult to do a co-teaching course. You have to really push and say, okay, then it's more difficult to co-teach than to say teach. Because you're not only reacting to your students, you're also working with a partner. And it requires a lot of coordination. So we don't do that very well in American academia as it has evolved. But the thing that I would say that I'm very interested in, we at Rowan, we have a associate vice president of AI, machine learning and AI, right? And she's really very, very creative. She's always done machine learning and AI before it became, as you said, before it became something that everybody was interested in. And she has basically said to everybody, the mechanical stuff, the technological stuff is not going to happen as well at Rowan as it will happen elsewhere. We are working on it, but we cannot compete with some other universities with the resources. But she said, we can really become amazing if we can do interdisciplinary AI. And she's one of our, she's a champion of humanities and social science and communication. So we had a AI in health, and what can we do with AI in health? And I showed up to give a talk, and everybody looked, why is she here? The medical doctors would say, why is she here? And then after we were done, they realized why I was making my presentation. So there are many models that have happened in American academia. One of my favorite is the University of Buffalo's, I don't know if any of you have seen that. They have now an AI in society program that has AI plus X, right? So it's in the curriculum process, it makes this very quickly. So it's AI plus X, the X could be anything, right? Could be engineering, could be. So what they've done is, I like to read for you what the X in Buffalo is. Logic, language, communication, geography, policy analysis, and economics. There's no technical anything, maybe the most technical is economics and policy analysis. And includes two minors, artificial intelligence, and then crime and society and AI ethics. So the idea is really, it shakes a lot of the last 25 years of American academia, which is we need to bring in these things that have, if you look anywhere now, you will see that these areas that were basically closing down in universities are being pushed inside the idea of collaboration and interdisciplinary. And universities that have not taken care of the humanities, the social science, and communication are going to have to struggle to bring them in a way that is important. The other way is stackable credentials. So you bring, that's interdisciplinary. You could say, let's do for, we have 120 credit hours. Let's divide them into various credentials so the person graduates with a solid interdisciplinary program. Many of the interdisciplinary programs lack, in my opinion, methodology, for example, because for some reason their methodological training is not as strong as disciplinary programs. So let's strengthen those through stackable credentials so the person who graduates has all the important and strong areas. And then there is the research institutes and centers. So Stanford has an interesting center, and we've been debating. We are hiring an ethicist, but it's an AI ethicist because everybody says, "Oh, we have a biomedical ethicist." Well, it's a biomedical ethicist, not an AI ethicist. So we have to explain that to people. So they're called the Stanford Center is called Human-Centered Artificial Intelligence. I think we should call it people-centered, but we'll see if that goes well for now. University of Cincinnati has another one. The one that I really like and that I think we haven't talked about are these open access community and open source organizations. In order for us to basically educate, we have to also educate our communities. It's not enough to educate only our students. So we need to create open source organizations within our universities, support those, and bring in all these people who need to be retrained, and retrain them in an interdisciplinary way that allows them to go back and start doing their job as they should.
Thank you. So in my next question, I want to focus on the ethical and societal dimensions. What role should higher education play in shaping responsible AI use, ensuring our graduates are not only competent, but also conscientious leaders? Maybe we can start from you.
Can you say the question again?
This is the question about ethical and societal dimensions. So what role should higher education play in shaping responsible AI use, ensuring our graduates are not only competent, but also conscientious leaders? You want to go first?
Yeah, sure. Universities must lead in this, right? At least, I always say, especially American universities, because if you look at the world, for now at least, the most important educational system that people mimic around the world is the American system, right? We are basically, at least we define ourselves as ethical, value-laden, human-centered, right? Caring about the students that are first generation. All these ethical concepts are already existing because AI is going to create a lot of issues, right? The digital divide isn't going to be only for the rich and the poor. The digital divide in AI is going to be, if you speak English and French, maybe you will be able to get AI. If you speak any other language, maybe German, eventually. But if you speak any other language, it's going to take a long time for us to access. So people who are not in the West who speak these languages are gonna be in the digital divide even more than they are today. So we should definitely, as we call it, what's happening, what AI is doing to education is a paradigm change, epistemic change. We should be the epistemic stewards. We should steward those changes and begin systematically figuring out what is it that we need to do. Is it ethics only? I want to say something about responsibility. When I started talking about ethics with my colleague at Brown, I remember we're friends, so we were talking, and she speaks the same language I speak, so we were speaking in Arabic, and we were going back and forth, and she started correcting me because I'm talking about ethics and morality and value laden, and she said, "Oh no, we need to." Yeah, we do responsible AI. And that's when I stopped her and I said, I don't know if that word really makes any sense for an ethicist. You can be responsible. I'll give you an extreme example. A prison correctional officer can be very responsible. They can basically punish the people who are in the cells if they don't obey. They're responsible. They're following the rules. So responsibility is defined by following the rules. But they are non-ethical most of the time when they torture their prisoners, right? So responsibility does not denote you can be very responsible but yet unethical. So we need to be ethical and value-laden, and what universities can do is to develop the actual value. And the value, as everybody here said, should be human-centered. And we have somehow lost the human-centeredness somehow in a lot of things we do. And what does that mean? We need to figure out what is good for humans across the world, not only in certain cultures. And we should embed this idea of the public good and democratic imagination in whatever we do. And that is, I know I say it, and my students always tell me I like to hug trees. I do like hug trees. If being democratic is hugging trees, I think AI should be democratized and should be culturally sensitive and culturally relevant in a way that we have not been thinking about. As I said, if you don't speak English and French today, you may not be able to use AI, ChatGPT like this, or even develop anything that is, employed in AI. And some of the best developers are English speakers, but their native tongues are not. And we don't know how in the future this movement of population is going to be, given all what we are seeing.
Okay. All right, that was very important. The only thing I want to add is that, so these machines do what you tell them to do, right? So, and as long as we are in the loop with the machines, right? Because we're talking about all these terminology that relates to humans. So the machines, like, if you ask ChatGPT if you're ethical, that would wonder, like, am I ethical? So they're not designed that way. They're designed to provide a service to you, whatever that you want from it. It will do that service with the best possible way. So there is that's a big discussion right now everywhere in terms of, what's the capability of all of these machines? Are they going to get smarter and smarter, and then are they going to take over? So obviously there's a possibility of all of that happening, right? So I did go to Ohio State a couple days ago. There was a artificial intelligence conference with human factor in the middle, right? So there were studies from like Carnegie Mellon and all of these big schools where they're talking about, machines directing machines, right? Just take the human factor out and you can tell the machine and press a button and it's going to do that for you. It's, robots do that, right? So if the robot is like only gets command from you and press a button. But what about that machine gets a command from your computer directly? Not from you, but from your computer that has an LLM in it. And then, machines communicating with each other start telling each other do things that are very wrong, right? So we're not in it, and we're not, and they might not take that commands from us anymore, right? Like, so that's where the concern with all these ethical things is that. So a lot of those terminology relate to human behavior. We can't lie, we can't cheat, but there are very limited meaning when it comes to these machines and how they are operated. There's a problem like that. And universities are really not in a place to regulate any of that because of the lack of the knowledge and understanding of AI in the classroom by the faculty. So the faculty's, areas are very limited in terms of AI unless they actually work in that area. Just because they do have to do coding with LLM doesn't mean that they really do truly understand the potential of the knowledge. So these are all corporations right now. So it is a concern in terms of what they can do. So you can wake up one day, find out that all of your retired money is gone. I mean, it's such a good, possible thing to do right now because they can be communicating with the machines, right? So the machines can communicate with the machines, getting directions from those machines to provide all of sorts of information about you. And you're not there to confirm. Why do you think that they're going to check with you? They can do it between each other and open up all of your accounts before you know it. And, and this capability is available today. So that's why, we can try to be as ethical as we want them to be, but at the same time, the smartness level of these machines can be much beyond ours. It depends on the data that they feed, and the better the data gets, the more smarter they are getting. So unless the governments put rules and regulations and police it, I don't think that, just simple policies like don't cheat. Okay, so it just doesn't make sense to a student and the tool that they are using not cheat, right? Like, so what does that mean? That means like you tell me what you know, and the student's intention is to learn from the machine what they want to know. So that relationship is really different than how it used to be 20 years ago in the class. So I think some of these areas need time to settle. There's just so much going on. I go to these meetings and, that's the most difficult area right now because the other stuff, the speed, the computational power, what it can do is all better understood by us. But the capacity of how smart they can get and all the ethical stuff. So my student for a project did a fake news about just one of these stories, like Alec Baldwin, remember, by mistake shoot the lady, in a film set. So he completely changed the story, saying that actually Alec Baldwin had an affair with the lady, and they had a fight, and they didn't want to get this to be out, and that's why he shoot the lady. But he has the tools to be able to put together a 5-minute news as real as it can get. And I did tell him, you are not allowed to post it at all. This will stay in the classroom. It's so dangerous because you did it so bad. In terms of the story makes a lot of sense. And he provides some fake documentation where they were texting each other. It's stuff like that. Like think about how much somebody can damage you, right? And if this goes out and people start sharing, thinking that this is a legitimate news agency, and you can just say this is from CNN, and here is the news we got, and you can use the CNN anchor's voice in the background because you can just copy it and train the machine to sound like that. So this is a class from Project Undergraduate. And it was excellent. And he ended up teaching during the summer and AI summer camp because he was so good. But how do I tell, how do I prevent this, right?
So, I was just thinking when I was hearing this and this, fascinating conversation, right? That, I don't know, maybe if we have Google Translate when we're using an LLM, we can overcome not knowing, not knowing, language beyond French and English, perhaps, Google Translate can help us there. But look, again, what I can add here is just we are just beginning to scratch the surface, right? Clearly, as in this example that has just been shown, that the notion of using AI to create deep fakes is so very powerful, right? And what responsibility do we have as educators to help our students, okay, they are going to be going out there, the skill sets to understand and detect these things. Is that one of our responsibilities, right? So what is that moral compass that we have to be able to present to our students? In the keynote conversation earlier this morning, right, Micheline talked about the fact that we need to not lose sight of the fact that the human has to be in the center of this particular equation. And if the human is going to be in the center of this equation, then where does ethics come in? How do you incorporate ethics? And what impact when we talk about moral responsibility, for instance? How do you model that into the equation? How do we model that into the curriculum? These are existential questions that we are only now beginning to address. So what the answers are, is it more regulation? Is it less regulation? I think those are some of the questions that we as society need to answer, certainly as institution, right? When we talk about faculty need to understand exactly to what extent should we have policies that allow students to do X, and then perhaps limit students from doing Y when we or whoever the we is decide that this is not a good thing. And I don't think we are yet there where we have begin to have a very good understanding how do we resolve these dilemmas. And to me, that's one of the challenges we are going to have to deal with as educators, right? How do we try to make sure that whether you call it the moral ambiguity, ethical practices, how do we begin incorporating that into our curriculum? And fundamentally, in as much as a lot of our time is spent on improving the AI systems, we need to also begin to ask these questions of ourselves and in terms of what we do.
So we have about 20 minutes. I want to open this conversation to questions. We can address your question to the entire panel or one person in the panel. Who wants to go first?
Thank you. Okay, this is a zinger. We can sit and talk about this as much as we want, but if we don't get faculty on board to use these tools, that's a big chasm that I've seen. I used to be in higher ed. Because it's not just about chat. It is about learning about AI, it's learning with AI, it is changing. Yeah, the whole interaction with students. You can't say, oh, you can't use ChatGPT and cheat. Well, then that requires faculty to teach in a different way. Teach in a way that they can't cheat. So I've seen this with other tech adoption, and it's really hard to get faculty on board. Nobody likes to be told how to teach. How do you guys plan on doing that with your own institutions? Think about this, even when we went through COVID. A lot of resistance there to change to use Zoom. So what, any ideas how you can get faculty really on board? Because if they don't, the students will never benefit from the positives of AI and just it becomes a negative thing.
So I think in our case at NJIT, so, as I think I mentioned, so I did send, 15 of them to a course where they know how AI works and see how they can adapt to their classes. The other thing that we did is, I mean, you cannot force faculty, you have to bring excitement into the way that things that we are doing. So we do have March 26th is an AI, campus AI day. So anybody on campus can show their, you know, algorithms, they can do fake news and whatever. So the campus that day there are no classes, but anything and everything about AI, conversations about AI, anything that you wanted to offer as your AI product, it's all going to be that day. So it is just more that they're trying to bring it up as something that's not going to be like, oh, everybody complains every day, but it's more of, it's here, we have to better understand it, and we have to learn it, right? The learning, faculty has to learn. So unfortunately, this tenure system in United States is a huge disabler. And how many of you agree with me? How many of you don't agree with me? Right? So there has to be review periods for faculty, because there has to be something that they cannot just the first 6 years of put a lot of productivity and then don't do anything the rest of the time. Tenure was not that intention, right? So universities started with theological, institutes, right, back in the days. And there you have priests and all of that in the universities teaching, for them it might make sense because which priest is going to be not tenured, like, right? But as these kind of structures, are in other institutes like all the years, they kept some of these, like, job security and stuff. Although we have excellent faculty who can learn and who can do more things, but, they always have this comfort zone that, oh, if I don't do it, nothing happens, so I'll maybe do it tomorrow. So, and some schools started to change it, like California has a 10-year review period, so that, you can actually say, I want you to learn these new tools and technologies that integrate it. So the only thing I can do as a dean is to encourage them and show how exciting and fun some stuff will be. I provide funding for them to go to conferences and learn AI from seminars and attend like MIT classes. So MIT has a lot of excellent, programs online that you could take about how to use AI, not the technical part necessarily. You can use AI applications in these modeling and applications to be learned. It doesn't have to be all the heavy technical part. So, trying to find out if there's any way the class lectures can be changed. That's the other problem, is that you cannot be doing the click explaining and assume that the students will pay attention. They're not paying attention anymore. We put a no phone policy in the classroom because everybody is fighting to get the students' attention to phone, so we have, unless the instructor is using it for a purpose that the phone is needed, the phone has to be away. Sorry, but you have to listen to what the faculty says. But then we make it much more experiential learning, project-based, where there's no instructor teaching them, but the instructor is more of the expert person helping them learn, but there's other tools for learning. So that's how we are trying to change this whole thing. But so that's a big challenge in universities, unfortunately, what you're mentioning.
I think it just sort of reinforces surveys that have shown, right? Because faculty, I think one of the most recent surveys said that fewer than 40% of the faculty expressed a degree of proficiency not only proficiency, even comfort with using AI tools in the classroom, right? So if they don't know, of course, faculty inherently are not going to be wanting to use it. And that's fundamental to solving that issue, or addressing at least that issue. That's one of the things we are doing, and pretty much along those lines. And although we are not sending folks to MIT, but what we have brought in is, a significant comprehensive training program for faculty. This particular semester started out with full-day seminars, and then supplemented by half-day seminars. And the key is to be able to upskill these faculty. On the other hand, we also recognize that faculty wants some sense of clarity as to what does this all mean, right? So what is that policy, for instance, that is going to guide plagiarism? What's that policy that is going to be affecting when a student is going to be, using these tools? How do I go about adjusting my pedagogical approaches to it? If you are just going to be using the more traditional things that you have already been using for the past 5 or 10 years, that's not going to work, right? So do you go back and perhaps, require more oral examination as a way to assess so that quote unquote students are not cheating or plagiarizing, and they are coming in front of you and you are testing their knowledge? And perhaps this goes back to hundreds of years. And maybe we need to revisit some of those pedagogical techniques, right? So there is a lot of learning that we have to do as faculty, as well as learning in the context of some of these things. So some things will change, many things may still remain the same. And I think that's where we are, again, at least us here in Silverman, we're still trying to figure out what is the best path forward.
It's a very difficult question. How do you convince human beings to do anything? Democratically, right? So we are a union shop, right? And our head of the union is a social scientist, and our Senate person is an English professor. And last week, we had a board of trustees meeting, and the English professor, who said the Senate, got up and started bashing AI. He can do whatever he wants. And of course, who gets blamed? The dean. How can you do that? I said, I have nothing to do with it, right? So I think my approach is the following. That's my approach. I want it to work. Is I am afraid of AI too. There are limits. I mean, we have to adopt it, but it's not categorically I don't see the problems and the limits of it, right? I worry about critical thinking, I worry about human interaction, I worry about human-centeredness, right? I worry about judgment. I'm terrified of machine to machine. Do we remember what happened to our students, to our international students who basically, as they had any record, any criminal record, which was basically a ticket, a speeding ticket or something, they came into, ICE came in and took them out of the law school. That's a machine talking to a machine, right? They used AI to do that. So my faculty know that I understand the limits, but I also understand that a faculty member who uses AI, whether it's in research or in teaching or in their own life, will do things faster and better. And there will be a point when the ones who are not using it are going to be so behind. Talk about digital divide. So I say, but I also say that I didn't hear the speaker this morning, but for me, the human-centeredness is important. And I tell my faculty, if we don't bring in the human-centeredness, it will not happen. So part of it is the fear has to, you have to be transparent about the fear of what the negativities are. I mean, as social scientists, we have studied technology from the minute that we have increase in population because of technology until today. Industrial revolution. We know the positives and we know them, but we also know that this is faster than anything else. And if we're hesitant, some of us are now, and it's not the cliff that's going to hurt out. It is, I mean, I have to think about it, when I have a table I wanna do, I put it in ChatGPT and it says, wait a second, analyze it, 2 seconds later, the table is up. If I'm gonna do it, it will take me X an hour to do. So I will have the table and I'm trying to do other things, I put the information, it's human centered, but I have an assistant who's helping. That's how I talk about it. Now, the table can't be generated by ChatGPT, but I can give it all the information and give it all the, I mean, I'm there, I'm human, I'm there. Now, we are doing things like, the other thing is you don't want to go extremes. We've heard people come in and talk to us about how AI is going to be teaching our classes, right? We are going to be teaching research methods through AI. Done. We've heard all that. As a dean, I need to be very, 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 very careful with the faculty in saying, that's his opinion, or that's her opinion, right? That is not what we're doing at the university, because everyone's trying to flex their muscles about AI. And then finally, education. We have a plan the coming year to not only talk about technicalities, we are going to have a couple of sessions about technicalities, but we are going and addressing AI with art, AI with business, AI with sports, of course, AI with social science there. So we are doing these workshops that have been very good because we've done a AI tutor, a workshop that we've had to repeat. We thought we were going to have one in summer and we're done. We've had 4 so far. So people who don't like it come to the workshops and criticize. And then there's a give and take. So transparency, education, and clearly not any of the extremist ideas that we are hearing. And then finally, basically telling your faculty how you feel. There are fears, and we need to be aware of them, and we need to come.
We'll see. See if it works.
We'll see. We only have 8 minutes left. There's another session, the afternoon session, 2:30, so we have to finish on time. One more question.
Hello, I'm Paul Gaines-Van from Martin Luther King University. Thank you for this great discussion. I had a question about the regulation. Is it possible to create independent regional and national committees like the other disciplines from the other disciplines to release regulations about AI?
So I think at the, with all the security level, right, we're talking about the level where it starts hurting humans, their finances, their belongings and things like that. Obviously, there has to be, we're regulated, right? We have so many regulations that is, defines how we live and how we work. That has to be the same with AI. The only problem is that it is, it depends on the administration, but I think it's coming slow or not coming at all. They're just kind of letting this be. But there has to be some limitations in terms of, where you have to stop so that the humans not be hurt. Like you can't just not let this be, freely being used, freely being, it's like, it's like guns, right? Like you have to have rules and regulations around where you could use it, how you can use it, and if you don't use it properly, you have to get, penalties and, so there has to be policing around it. The only problem is that we can do that in US, but the whole wide world has to do it too. The Russians, the Chinese, and all of them also, because they access our data and they're also using our, ChatGPT's type AI tools in there, but it's so easy for their tools to be able to impact our tools, right? We can have the rules, but the bad players are not maybe us, but them. It's like the cybersecurity man of so how do you prevent that happening? So absolutely, I agree that there has to be some boundaries. One thing I want to quickly mention is that So data is very important, right? One of the things that you could do to protect is to understand that every time you're posting something to tools like ChatGPT, right? So that goes to, that becomes a data for anyone and everyone to be able to see it and the machine use it to learn, right? So, of course, right now companies start using, Microsoft Copilot and Google, Gemini, where the commercial versions of those do not release the data that you're using in AI to be released to the common data. So that's very important because that can protect the company as well as you if you're using it within your companies or, making sure that AI is within your system. You're not putting your text returns and text forms to AI and asking ChatGPT to do something for you. Those are going to be available to the whole wide world. So that's the other thing that we really have to, all of us have to really learn, like, lifelong learning. We have to learn all of these tools and what they do, exactly how it does it, so that you can protect yourself.
Yeah, just to, I think that's one of the crucial issues that we're gonna have to address as society, right? It goes back to, when in the early days of the internet and how, we will be managing that flow. So where companies got together and signed some sort of consortium agreements where how data is going to be processed. I think there is some substantial difference this time around where there are, countries are in many ways perceive themselves as in a race to reach some kind of a summit. And if they put guardrails, somehow it is going to be limiting their ability to achieve that particular summit. Why it would not, for instance, limit the ability of a competitor nation to do that. And until we are able to solve that, I don't see realistically an approach to address that. Until we come together across different countries, these agreements or understandings are not going to be possible only if companies within North America or companies within, let's say, North America and Europe agree on some kind of a common protocol for managing this information. It is going to have to be a consortium across. And given the geopolitical situation that we are in today, the likelihood of that seems to be a little bit more remote. But nevertheless, I do believe that that is going to be something that is going to be characterizing a lot of how AI is going to be transforming society today.
So I've been asked that question many times. And for me, it's not one approach. In order to deal with AI, we have to have multi approaches, right? We need to educate, we need to have awareness, we need to have policy, because we're not going to be able to get the policy pushed for another few years. So my approach to figuring out is that what are the various ways by which we can use institutions to help us develop ways to control. And I use the word very, very carefully. Control, it's not coming out because I can't find another word. Because AI reflects human teaching and human nature in many ways, it can result in bad things. And so we need to stop it in multiple ways and multiple approaches. Parents, teachers, the government, I don't know, advertisement, all that coming together will basically, and then eventually policy. Policy takes a long time. So I'm just thinking about it in a multi-pronged way to actually make it a responsible and ethical tool.
All right, thanks so much. Please give a round of applause for that.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Nice pictures. Thank you.
So you.
And graduated like.
So I will start with all. So this is Ben. Thank you very much for your contribution. Each one of you will respond.